nice pictures around there. And Mike Rust is comparing tonight. Mike is down on the Welsh borders. And Mike Paxton, who's also here, is down in Reading. So, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company, welcome to Rock the Kasbah. Right. And I think I'm going to start with a story. If that's all right with you, Mike.
You carry on. You carry on.
As your boss tonight, I ask your permission.
Well, what you have to do, John, is pay me 500 quid. Okay.
Right. Okay. Right. And it's 15 minutes till my live session, so I'm talking to absolutely nobody here except the world. And so I'm going to do a story from the Isle of Man, Cormac. And it's about an old woman. It's from way back in time, beyond the 7 hills and the 7 rivers, when mountains were taller and rivers were deeper and forests were thicker. And there was an old woman, and she lived up in the mountain. She loved it up there. The birds came in from a windowsill, and the animals came, just munched anything she threw out of the door. But occasionally she walked down to town. And you know what people are like with old people and children? They're always out telling them what to do. They said, why do you want to live up there by yourself? Come down and live in the town with us. She said, well, to tell you the truth. Okay. Maria can't find the link to Rock the Kasbah. If someone can just Facebook her and tell her to just press the gold button, she should know that. Anyway, the old woman, she said, I'm happy up in the hills. The birds come and eat from my windowsill, the animals come and eat from my door. And but to tell you the truth, she occasionally got a bit lonely, especially in the winter when the snow was piled high. And it was one such night. There was a log on the fire, crickle, crackle, went. And the snow was piled high on the windowsill. She looked up and she was wondering, she was just wishing she had someone to talk to. And she looked up and there was a pair of yellow eyes in the window. And there was a scratching on the door. And she opened the door and there was the scrappiest, scrawniest, most moth-eaten cat you've ever seen in all of your life. And she brought it in and she brushed it and she gave it milk and she gave it food. And she did that every day until its fur shone. Its coat was the color of beech leaves in autumn. And everywhere the old woman went, the cat went too. And when she talked to the cat, it looked as if it understood every word she was saying. Please come and have a seat. I'm telling a story to the world at the moment, and but it's about a cat and you haven't heard it before, so please come in and sit down. There we are. And this old woman has found a cat. She loves that cat. When she's talking, it looked as if it understood every word she was saying. When she was baking, it was watching her as if to say, so that's how it's done. And everywhere the old woman went, the cat went too. And the old woman, she went out. One day she's drawing water from the stream. The cat disappeared. It was nowhere to be seen. Cat's name is Cormac, blessed of my heart. And she starts calling it Cormac, Cormac. Can you shout that? Cormac. They won't. That cat won't hear you just shouting that loud. Shout even louder. Where are you? She says, the old woman. But the cat is nowhere to be found. She looks here. She looks there. She looks up the mountain. She looks down the mountain. And weeks later, she hears a scuffling in the undergrowth. And she pushes it out, and instead of a cat, is a little figure, no bigger than that. one of the Buggins, one of themselves, one of the good folk. And she said, I knew you had taken my cat. Give it back right now. The little fellow said, what would you do to get it back? Anything, 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 she said. Talk is cheap. It's action that counts. And you must perform 3 tasks. Give us the first. And give us the first. And I'm zooming right now. So can you listen? Shout out when I tell you. And that'll be marvelous. Thank you. Right. Give us the first. Tonight, next Saturday, is the Good People's Dance. And before that, there'll be a big fete. There'll be a big celebration. And there'll be more people there than there are at Folk East. And you must bake cakes for all of us. Well, she went home. She started baking. She had a voice in her head saying, cut the pieces small, cut the pieces small. And she made thousands and thousands and thousands of the tiniest cakes you've ever seen in all of your life. And the next set, there was a knock on the door. And there was row upon a row of Buggins, the tiny people, each with a basket on their back. And she filled each basket with cakes. And they thanked her for making them so small. Give me my second task, she said. I'll do anything, anything, anything. Talk is cheap. It's action that counts. Next Saturday is the Good People's Hunt. And you must hunt with us from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun comes down. Well, she didn't like hunting much, the idea of hunting all day, but she thought she'd try, and she's getting ready, and she heard a voice in her head saying, ride to the front and grip with your knees, ride to the front and grip with your knees. And so the next Saturday, there was a knock on the door just as the sun was rising. And there was row upon row of Buggins, each with a tiny pony, except for the one in front, and they borrowed that from the farmer down the road, and that was perfect right. Well, I say borrowed, don't ask his permission. And she got on it and she rode to the front and she gripped with her knees and she felt the wind in her hair and the wind in her skirts. And she soon forgot about the little people, the hunt, or even her cat, Cormac Creek. And before she knew it, the sun was setting. And she'd ridden all day. Give me the third task, she said. I'll do anything, anything, anything. Talk is cheap. It's action that counts, said the little fellow. And I'll tell you in a week's time, because he was sore, and so was she. Most of our games were even sorer. But in a week's time, he said, tonight is the Good People's Dance, and you must dance with us from the time the sun goes down to the time the sun comes. Well, she wasn't that good at all-night parties when she was a girl, and she thought, well, she thought she'd try, and she put on her best frock, and she heard a voice in her head saying, remember the songs you knew when you were a little girl. Remember the songs you knew when you were a youth. So what good's that going to do me? Still, the voices have been good so far. She went down to that little stone circle, and there was a fella playing his fiddle off his elbow, traveller style. And first of all, he played a jig, and she danced a jig. Then he played a reel, and she danced a reel. And then he played a polka, and she danced a polka. And then he played the same jig, and then the same reel, and then the same polka, and then the same jig, and then the same reel, and then the same polka. And she realized she only knew 3 tunes. And she remembered a song she knew when she was a little girl. And she went up and said, do you want to learn a new tune? Now, Mike knows this. There is not a fiddler in this world who'll say no if he's learned if he's asked if he wants to learn a new tune. And as she taught him the tune, she took a bit of a breather. And first she taught him a fast tune, then she taught him a slow. And then she taught him a fast tune, then she taught him a slow. And it went on all night. And before she knew it, she was the last person on her feet and the sun was rising and she completed all 3 tasks. Give me my chroma creep back, give me my cat back now. Patience, they said. Talk is cheap, she said. It's action that counts. And she went home and she waited and she waited and she waited. And there was a little knock on the door. And she opened the door, and instead of a cat, there was the most beautiful girl she'd ever seen in all of her life, with hair the color of beach leaves in autumn. And she brought her in, and she asked her story. And apparently, when she was just a babe, she'd lost both her parents. And she'd been found by the little people. And realizing she'd need a proper human parent, by an enchantment, by magic, they'd turned her into a cat. And that cat had visited every cottage on the island. And the old woman was the only one who had loved the cat enough to perform all 3 tasks. So she was the one for the cat to live with. And although people tried to give the girl another name, she was always Chroma Cree, blessed at my heart for the rest of her. And that is the story of Chroma Cree. And I'm going to just put my phone down next to me and I'm going to mute. And we go. Well, can you all just shout hello from Folk East? And I want you to shout really loud. 1, 2, 3. Hello from Folk East. And Mike, over to you.
Hello from the World Storytelling Cafe. Can they hear me? Hello from the World Storytelling Cafe. We are talking to the world.
Hello.
Can you wave? Hello. Hello. That's lovely. Thank you very much, John.
We on it.
Right. So what we're going to do now is
we're
going to go to Abdu, and he's going, and you're going to have to mute, John. That's so. And Abdu, he's going to show us about the riad that's called the papillon in French, and now in Arabic you had a different word for it. Abdu.
Farasha. Yeah,
say
can
that
you
again?
Yeah, hello everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
In the English, it's called. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
we can hear you. Put your hands up. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So if you're going to tell us a few words, you're going to spend a few moments on telling us how beautiful this riad is, and then I'm going to tell a story, and then we're going to take it from there. So over to Abdu.
Good. So hello everyone. Good evening. I hope you all doing great. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Riad Papillon. Yeah, as I said, I had talked about Riad Cinema last time, and the Riad Papillon is part of this company, the Marrakesh Riad. And I've got Ali here, my colleague, is going to help me sharing some pictures. So if you just give us a few minutes, and yeah,
right. There we go.
Thank you, Ali. So this picture here is the main door of Riad Papillon. You can see the blue door with the hand of Fatima and all decorated. It's really one of the typical houses in Medina, one of the old design of the doors in Marrakesh. And you can see that the hand of Fatima is what we use to knock in the door. It's a beautiful door since we opened this house. Riad Papillon is one of the first houses that Dion had when they came to Marrakesh, and I've used to be walking in this place as a guardian, sleeping in the house and looking after the guests. It was really a nice place, and it's one of the beautiful boutique hotels in Marrakesh for family. It's a really good place for family. It's got 5 bedrooms, and with the nice courtyard in the pool, and all the rooms are really located really good. And we've had so many people stayed there, and they had a great experience, and they really loved it with all the service we're doing and all the good job that the team are doing. Can you go, Ali, for other picture, please? Yeah. Can you guess what's in here? that picture looks different, looks crazy, but there's something in that picture. It's really, it's one of the
It's a
amazing
butterfly.
things. Yeah, so you can see the butterflies. The butterflies was one of on the top of the lamps, you know. So that was our first guest in the house. As a coincidence, we've had these butterflies where we started putting furnitures in the house, and we had this butterfly come visit us. Imagine. That was amazing. No, so I took that pictures myself in that house, and I recognized that butterflies comes to visit in Riyadh, and was as I said, was one of the guests that visited the Riyadh the first. Can you go ahead with the other picture, Ali, please? And that's me, Abdul. That was one. I mean, this is the first time I've walked in Riyadh Papillon, and we just started making the house. We presented with the furnitures and all the things, and I took that picture myself. That picture is to me just for to remember this house, because it was a really good place, and we had a good memories in that place. And as I said, the house is situated in Medina, not far from Dal Basha Palace. It's one of the famous palaces that are in the corner, and we're not far from the square as well. And it's in a good location, really calm place. The street is amazing, and it's cool in the summertime. Now in America it's about 40 something degrees, and that street and this place is always cool, you know. Can you go, Ali? So this picture here, it's give us the how the rooms looks in that place. The rooms are really standard rooms, but they're really beautiful with the tile like and all the you know, the lamps and all the all the typical things in Medina. You can see the pillows, all the covers and all the slippers and the doors, amazing things from the souks. It's a really good place. As I said, the TED lights are all different in the houses. You can see this one is a grey color in the wall, and in the bathroom same as well. The other rooms are different TED, like different design. This one is I think this Bougainvillea room, because I mean the name of the rooms in this house, as I said, the Riyadh is a garden, used to be a garden, and we've choose the names of the rooms for as a plant. So we've had Bougainvillea rooms, and we had the Rose room, and Hibiscus room, and Geranium room, and Jasmine room. So all the name of the, you know, the flowers that the butterflies can go around, you know. So this one is Bougainvillea room. It's a nice room in the courtyard by the pool. Yeah, Ali, next one. This one is on the top right. This is Hibiscus room. You can see has amazing things and tables and all the things around the covers and that carpet designs in the floor, in the wall, and it's a really nice room with the big bathrooms. That, you know, the shower is a size of 2 people in the shower. Is really big shower with this luge and nice bed. It's a really good room as well. And on the right side, if you go down on the top, the room is on the right side of the first floor, you know. Yeah, Ali, next one. This is a bathroom design for the Jasmine room in the courtyard room. This is you can see the design, the all the sculpture things in the wall. You can see that was made by hand with these people that really had a good work in the house. You can see there's a leash and all that flowers in the wall. It's really nice. So in Riyadh, we use all the things that I said last time to help people. We've got all what people need. So we give a mobile phone for people that are going. I mean, when people arrive, the things we do is like that. We've got a very nice map and a very nice apps that people can download. We have phones, cell phone charge credit, and we have people are available to have 24/7. So we offer mint tea. We've got breakfast, and it can be any times when people are up, and we do meal in order. We've got all what people needs, and we've got a very human contact that people that staff provide to people in Riyadh. We ensure that people had a great experience in Marrakesh, and we share all the things that we had in that beautiful house. Next one, Ali. Yeah, this is another room. This one is the Geranium Room. It's on the top next to the kitchen on the left side. The color of that like is a different color. Is the aubergine color. Really nice bathrooms that in that room has, and really good size as well. And as I said, all the rooms are really good. The house is really nice for a family. It takes up to 11 12 people maximum. It's really good place that so many people visited the Riyadh and they had a good experience. And it got a very good atmosphere. As a feeling in that house when you come to it the first time, you just love it, you know. It's really good place to stay, and we do recommend it to everyone. In this picture here, you can see this is one of the first guest of this is one of our first guests that we had in Riyadh. You can see a party here, family party that stayed with us for a couple of days. They had a good meal in that time. They are celebrating. I think they are celebrating one of the very important occasion for them. They had a nice meal cooked that night. They had some musicians as well. This is a place that we use. Next on the top, you can see the fireplace that people can use in winter time. Yeah, and the fast hat, the reed fast hat is one of the things that our guests use to have fun in the house. Good, yeah. Next one. Yeah, you can see, as I said, they had some music. This is what our musician Gnawi that we use for celebration. Sometimes the guests they would love to have some entertainment, and we do offer this kind of entertainment as a Gnawi. We call it musician, you know, Gnawi musician. And you can see the hat that we offer to the guests to play with it and just have fun. Any other picture, Ali? Yeah, in this picture here, you can see this is our typical salad as a starter. We do a seasonal food. We use in all that kind of vegetables that we got from the market. You can see here five selection salad. It's the famous one that we use: the aubergine, the we call it zalouk, the zucchini or courgette, the other cucumber with the cheese, and this one the cabbage and the nuts and the rice, the pepper. Those are really delicious. And it's with the meal we offer the 5 selection salad and follow it with the tagine, lamb or chicken or tangia or couscous, and it's really delicious and nice food that we offer in every year. Yes, Ali? Ali?
That's from the pictures.
That's it?
Is that the pictures, Graham?
Yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
I
you,
hope that
everyone.
if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer your questions. And if you'd like to ask me anything, just.
Well, yeah, I've got a question for you, Abdul. When you say musicians, what sort of instruments do they play?
I think they're using it's not a guitar. It's a big instrument called sentir. I don't know if you've seen the Gnawi using that really long instrument.
Ali, can you mute, please, mate? Ali, can you mute, please? That's it. Go. Sorry. Go on out, Abdul.
Okay, I think. Okay, good. Can you hear me now? Good. Yeah, I said. Yeah. So if I don't know if you've seen the musician Gnawi playing before, because they're using one of the instrument they're using a bit long. That size is really long, and it's called the sentir. I don't know how if you've seen that before, sir. It's not a guitar. It's a bit long like that. It's a sentir.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's really different. Not easy to play with it. You have to practice for that. It's not easy. I think it's more harder than a guitar to play, you know. But it's you call it sentir, you know. And you're using that hat to put on the top just to throw it like that. It's really amazing.
Right.
So the GNOME musician is one of the things that we offer in the RIA just for fun to people. When you have a group like that, or a wedding party, or a birthday, or anything, just for fun that people would love to have it. We offer also the Kamarokshia. It's one of the traditional music in Marrakesh, called it the Kamarokshia. Where they're playing like that with the nafar. It's really different. So if you're able to visit us one day here, we would do it for you, sir, and you would have the experience. It's a really good.
Well, I'm coming over in February, and I'll show you.
Okay, we'll do it in February. Just tell me, and then we'll do it.
I don't know if you can see, but this is what I play. Can you see?
Well, yeah, that's really I don't know. That's really different. Yeah, it's that size. I think this is a bit bigger, but it's not like that. And I don't know how you play with it. I mean, when you come in February, I'll get that for you, and you will see the instrument now.
No, well, I'm looking forward. We'll get together for an hour or so and see. This comes from Scandinavia. It's Celtic. It's an ancient music. It's a modern replica, but it goes back 1,000 years.
Wow, that's yeah.
Stuff like that.
It's music. It has a really rich culture all over the world. So every country has different things.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
Any other questions?
Right. No, we'd just like to say thank you very much for popping in.
I would just say welcome to everyone. And Riyad Papin is saying welcome to you, and anyone that can be able to visit Marrakesh, we're happy to welcome you guys, and we would make sure they had a great time, and we do our best to make your visit just amazing. Thank you, guys.
Well, we're all looking forward. I'm coming over myself in February, so we're all looking forward to coming. Okay?
At the moment, it's really hot here in Marrakesh, and I think these 3 days it's much better. We got 35, 36. It's okay now. But I mean, last week we had 48.
Oh no! It's too hot.
All the hammams in Marrakesh are closed at the moment. Nobody goes to the hammam.
Yeah, it's too hot. You can't play cricket if it's that hot. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdul, for being here. Right. So we go straight back. Basically this is just a story round. So I'm going to tell a story. John's tell one. Maria, she contacted me earlier. So if I tell one, Maria, will you tell one after me? Right. Then we'll go to anybody else. We've got plenty of time. Anybody else who wants to tell a story? Susan, we've got Norman, we've got Mike, and we've got a Bob Kengis.
It's Canagus.
My friend.
It's Canagus, Mike.
Canagus. Sorry, I can't. My eyesight to me. And where are you from, Bob?
No, I'm in New Mexico.
You're in Mexico. Are you going to tell us a story?
I don't think so. Not today.
Not today. Okay, I'll be here next week, exactly the same time. If you care to join me then. Okay.
Alrighty.
So I'm going to tell a story now. Now, not that I like falling out with people, Maria, but you went and got the job I was after. Yes, you're laughing your head off. Yes, there's a job with the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon, and I was beaten by a better person and a better storyteller. And she got the job, and by all accounts, you've done it now, haven't you? You had a day on the boat, didn't you? Yeah. Well, one of the stories I was going to tell was this one, but I didn't tell the person who was doing the employing, because it's a rather special story which I got from a cricket. Which part of the world are you from, Murray? Are you from Warwickshire?
Hiya. I'm from Manchester, but I live in Lichfield, so I'm just on the edge of West Midlands. I'm just within the remit. I was really
right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you may not have heard this, but it's a gift. If you want to tell this, you tell this, okay?
Oh, thank you.
Because I was up in Morton-on-the-Marsh, and Morton-on-the-Marsh is up in the Cotswolds there, and we were playing cricket, and now I'm 66, so we're talking about 50 odd years ago. And it was raining that day. And so we all sat round in the pavilion, and they started telling stories and jokes. And this is one of the stories they told. Because from Stratford-on-Avon, there's a canal that goes to Oxford. And when they were building it, they had to build 3 tunnels. Now, if you're going to build a tunnel for a canal, the first thing you do through a hill is to make sure that the water doesn't get into it first. So you start either end and you start going to the middle, and you drill down from the top and you start going from the middle out. So you've got 4 crews of people, 4 sets of miners, all digging holes at the same time, and you just hope they join up. And then at the very last thing you do is you open up the ends and you let the water in, and the water should come up. For a canal, it doesn't need to come up more than about 2 or 3 feet in a tunnel, and that will see the canal boats through. Now, they were doing this, and now they're called the navvies, or the navigators. Now, they were basically a lot of Irishmen or local agricultural workers who could use a pick and a shovel, because it was all done by hand back in the day. There was no machines, and these were men. And they had to go down the ladder in the middle, and they go left and they go right, and they get to the rock face, and there they spend the day there, and they had to move 16 tons of rock and everything else, and they get it back to the tunnel, and they lift it up with a crane, and they put it to one side, and that's how they were doing it. Well, one Thursday lunchtime, a new crew got down there, the shifts changed, and 10 minutes later, they turned round, and on the floor of the tunnel, just where they were, out of the rock, fell a fairy baby. Now, this was a little fairy baby. It's only a tiny little thing about this big. And these were grown men. They were navigators. They were big, burly men. They drank beer, and they sang songs, and they played football. But wives they didn't have. Mothers, everybody's got a mother. But these guys didn't really do wives at the time. They were just earning money. So they did what all men would do in that particular situation. They panicked and went and found a woman. And so they ran away, and they ran up, and they ran down. Now, the woman they found, right, owned the pub down the corner. And they went in there every night, and she was the barmaid, and she was a good barmaid, because the standard of her banter and abuse was high. And the men liked her, and they trusted her, and they went running in, and they said, "We found a fairy baby." And she said, "Well, where is it?" And she said, "Well, we couldn't bring it out here. We left it. We've left one of our guys there, and he's standing there with a candle, and we're not, what do we do with a fairy baby?" And she turned round and she went, "Men, you're hopeless, aren't you? Go and strip a quarter of a cow." Now, when a quarter of a cow gets stripped, a cow has an udder, and in the udder, there's 4 bits to it. So if you strip a quarter out, it means you just take a quarter out, you just empty one of the cylinders inside the other. And you hopefully, it's an old poacher's trick is what it is. You call it stripping a quarter. And you hopefully the farmer doesn't notice that 1 quarter's gone. Because if you empty the whole cow half an hour before he's going to come and milk it, he'll notice something's going on. But if you just take a little bit, so they call it stripping a quarter. So one of them went off and they stripped the quarter, and they brought the warm milk back. And to this day, this is how the story goes. Because I think in part of this is a brave lass, this one. Because she went to the top, and she went down into that tunnel herself. And she went down 200 steps on an old rickety ladder, with a miner in front of her and a miner below her and a miner above her. But down she went to the bottom. And the men took her there, and they sat her down, and she picked up the little fairy baby herself. And with the milk that they stripped, she took her glove off and she made a little pinprick in it, and she sat there and she fed the little baby. And then she turned around to the miners and said, "We can't take this away with us. We have to leave it here, but we're going to need a shelf. So you're miners, dig me a shelf in the side of the wall." And they took their axes and they took their picks and they cut a little shelf. And the shelf was about 1 foot long and about 3 inches, maybe 4 inches tall, and about 6 inches deep. And they cut it there and then. And she took bits of her clothing and they made a little bed for it. And they put it in the corner in the little shelf, and they put a candle either side. And she sat there and she said, "Now we wait." And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Somebody has to be here all the time, and you can't disturb it, so you're going to have to stop work. Everybody's going to just have to stop work." Nobody's going to have to work. We have to wait for the mum and the dad, the fairy mother and father, to come and find their baby. I'll do the first shift. So in the darkness there, one of the lads stayed with her. She waited an hour, and the candles were put either side. And at the end of this hour, she picked up a little bit more milk, but the little fairy baby didn't need any more milk. And so she left it, and somebody else came down, and there was someone there every hour, changed at the top of the hour for the next 12 hours. Now, like I said, that was the afternoon where they all went down to the pub and they were all talking about it, and the boss came down, and the boss said, well, why aren't you working? And so they turned around and said, you better tell her. And she turned around and said they found a fairy baby in the middle of the tunnel. And he said, so what? I need a tunnel building. And she turned around and said these words: if you upset the fairies in that hill, that'll be the last time you put a tunnel in there, because you won't get a tunnel through there. The fairies have got to be your friends. If you go upsetting this fairy baby, the one thing they won't be is your friends. So do as you're bloody told. And the boss, to be fair, he sat down and thought, well, they're right. If there's fairies under there and we're digging a tunnel through their ground, if they upset us, we'll never make any money. We'll never get the tunnel finished. I better do as I'm told. And so for that Friday, there was no work done. But every hour on the hour, they changed, and every 6 hours, she went back. And they went to the farmer and they bought the milk this time. And they told the farmer what was doing, and the farmer came down with the milk, and it was warm. He'd taken it from the cow 2 minutes before, and it was warm milk. And she herself went down and she fed the little baby. Now, all day Friday, there was no work for them. So they all sat in the pub and started drinking, didn't they? Well, they hadn't been paid, but she put a tab on. She said, don't worry about it. It'll all get sorted out. And anyway, it'll all get sorted out one way or another, or I'll take it out of your wages next week or the week after. But for now, we have to make sure that the fairy baby is safe. So that's what they did all through the Friday night and all through the Saturday. Now, it's strange as I tell this story to you all, but that Saturday happened to be cup final day down in Wembley. Now, I don't know if you're going to actually believe this, but it was the only time that Oxford City went and played football that sometimes, for those of you who don't come from the UK, you'll call it soccer sometimes, but it's the game we play with the round ball. And they went down to Wembley and they were watching the football, and they came back and they were all listening to what was going on and everything else, and they had a fine old time. Every hour on the hour, somebody went up and they sat the fairy baby and someone came back down, and every 6 hours she herself went and fed the little baby itself. So that night finished and Sunday morning came and they all went to church. Of course, it was a day off, Sunday, holy day. They're all good Catholics, they all went to church. And around lunchtime, just as she was going to sit there, she went there and she looked up and the baby had gone. It had just disappeared completely. There were 2 candles there, but the baby is gone. But where the baby was, there was a little leather pouch. And she picked up the little leather pouch. And there was a little note. And on the little note, written in the old runes that we all know of, that I speak sometimes something else, and you have the size of, it's the corner of a rock, and they're just lines, but they are an old language, and the fairies can use them sometimes. They're called the old runes, the old Saxon runes. And there were a little rock there, and there were 6 runes. And when they worked out what it said, it just said this: thanks. That's all it said. Well, they all went back to the pub and they opened up the purse. And you know what was in it? It was fairy gold. And there was enough in that fairy gold to pay all the men for 2 days. So they all got that pay. There was enough to pay for all the beer that they had and all the food that they had and everything else. And by the by, just as a by the by, Oxford didn't win the football match. They came second in the final, so they didn't win at all. And when they counted it all up, there was just enough for the landlady to sit down and have a double gin and tonic, which is what she did that afternoon. And what was left over, she didn't have to work. So she gave it to one of her workers and said, you do the shift tonight. I'm not doing anything. I haven't slept very much. So that's the story of the little fairy, the baby in the tunnel and the fairy shelf. Now they opened that tunnel up. And as you go on Oxford up to Stratford, or you go from Stratford to Oxford, you go through 3 tunnels. And one of the tunnels halfway through, there's a little shelf. And on the little shelf, there's 2 candles. And the boaters themselves, if they're not lit, they will leave a candle there and they will light it, because they know the best way to get out of the canal tunnel safely is to make sure you don't upset the fairies. And there's a tune that goes with this, and it goes like this. The story of the fairy baby and the fairy shelf. Right. I was 17 when I first heard that, and I'm 66 now, so it's going back a long time. So there you go. There's not many that we tell. That was before we started telling stories in folk song clubs and things like that. But Dad and my brother both know that one. Okay. Right, someone's telling me to change my settings. Right.
Yeah, your music didn't come through, Mike. The
tune come through. Right. Put your hand up if you can hear it this time. Okay. There's not many canal stories, Maria, but that's one of them. Anyway, I believe I don't know how many times we met before, but you know Kath Edwards, who's a great friend of mine. And Paul, I was on the river with Paul the other day. We were canoeing down the river together in the same boat. Anyway, so if you're going to tell us a story tonight?
I will tell you a story, yeah. I'm just thinking, I think we'll carry on with the fairy theme because we seem to have a bit of a theme going. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You're all okay? Excellent. So, this time of the year, the blackberries are coming, aren't they? I went out and picked my first bag of blackberries this year. I always carry them in a dog poo bag so that it really freaks people out when I get one out and eat it. As I'm walking back along the canal. Anyway.
You do what? You put the blackberries in a poo bag.
Well, usually the only thing I have in my pocket to carry blackberries in is a dog poo bag. So, you know, and it gives people a bit of a start. Anyway, when I was a little girl of about 9 or 10, my great-gran, Mary Jane Nolan, was already 100. And she used to sit me down. I used to sit by the fire with her. She had one of those leather, I think it was Moroccan actually, one of those leather poofs that you could sit on, and I would sit between her and the fire. And she would tell me things about Ireland. And she grew up in a time when people still put milk out for the little people. And she told me all sorts of tales. She told me about when my granddad got stolen away by the leprechauns for 2 days, and she absolutely believed this. And she told me that I should never say a baby was too pretty, otherwise the fairies would have it away. If I ever got kidnapped and ended up in Tir na Nog, I was never to eat or drink anything, because if I did, they would have me forever. And she also said something else, which it took me a long while to work out why she used to say this. She used to say a bit of dirt is good for everyone. Because if the fairies can get you completely clean of every speck of this world, they can keep you forever. Tim was a little lad of about 8 or 9. He was one of those little scruffy urchins that are always outside. They're always digging in the dirt or up a tree or fishing in a stream. And he used to love foraging. Every time he came back, he'd always bring his mammy something back. He would bring her a handful of hazelnuts or some apples that he might have scrumped. Now and again, he did occasionally bring a little fish back. He was very proud of that. But the best stuff, the best time of the year and the best harvest was always around this time, late summer, because that was when the blackberries came, and he loved picking blackberries. Anyway, one crisp autumn morning, Tim's mum put him some clothes out, and she put his scruffiest clothes out. She had a jumper that was full of pulls and holes, and he had a pair of trousers that were all stained and ripped and a bit too short for him, because there was no point in dressing him in his best clothes to go out blackberrying, because she knew he'd come back covered in stains, and like as not, all his clothes would be ripped. And when he came down for breakfast, she saw him and she laughed. Look at the state of you, she said. Oh, look at you, God love you. You're a right mess. Oh, don't worry. Nobody will see you. Anyway, you won't be gone for long, will you? Go and get us some blackberries, and while you're out, I'll make us some nice porridge, and when you come back, we'll put the blackberries on top. How about that, Tim? And he picked up his basket, and off he went down the lane, whistling as he was going. Very happy little lad he was. And Tim's mum got on with all those jobs that we women do when nobody's looking. And she got on with all the housework, and he was a bit late coming back. She got the porridge ready, and he still hadn't come back. This was not like Tim. He didn't miss his food. Anyway, she thought he must have found himself a really good patch of blackberries, and she carried on. And when the clock struck 9 and he still wasn't back, that was getting a bit worrying now. And when the clock struck 12, she took off her apron and she went out into the lane. And she walked down the lane, calling for Tim all the way. And she walked faster and faster. And by the time she'd got to the gate, her heart was beginning to hammer in her chest. You know what it's like when you can't find your child. And the gate opened with a scream of protest, and she went into the meadow where the fairy thorn was. And the grasses in the meadow were quite high. And although the fairy thorn was at the top of only a very shallow hill, it seemed to her that it took far too long to get up that hill, and that the grasses pulled at her legs and tried to slow her down. And she fought on and she climbed up this shallow hill. And when she got to the top of it, she was out of breath. And she stood there for a moment and looked around. It was a beautiful day, but there was no sight of him. And she called his name to every corner as loudly as she could. And it was when she went round to the other side of the fairy thorn that she saw them. The blackberries. These were the glossiest, fattest blackberries you've ever seen. They were so black that the light danced upon them like stars in a night sky. And they smelt delicious. They were, the air was full of the smell of them, and she couldn't resist it. She bent down, picked one up, popped it onto her tongue. It was like summertime exploded in her mouth. And she stood there for a moment with her eyes closed, and she breathed in the scent of the warm day. She could hear the birds singing. She could hear the grass swaying in the breeze. It was delicious, and she forgot all about Tim, and she began to stuff her face with these blackberries. She was cramming them into her mouth until the juice was running down her chin. And she didn't stop until she saw the basket. The basket was there on the floor, tipped over, and there was a glut of blackberries strewn across the floor. But there was no sign of Tim. Well, everyone came out to help, the whole village, and they searched all day long into the night, but it got too dark and they had to go home. And Mary, Tim's mum, she had to go and try and get some sleep. And she must have somehow fallen asleep, because she woke up the next morning and the first thing she did was run over to Tim's room and open the door just in case he was, but he wasn't there. And she made her way down the stairs, heavy she was. And she went into the kitchen, she sat there and she didn't know what to do. She put the kettle on. That's what we do. We put the kettle on, don't we? And she put her head down on the table and she wept. And the kettle started to sing. And then she heard, over the noise of the kettle singing, she heard whistling, and in walked Tim. "Hiya, Mammy, look what I've got for you," he said. He had 2 sticky hands full of blackberries and he put them on the table. Really proud he was of these beautiful blackberries. "They'll be lovely on our porridge. Is the porridge ready yet, Mum?" And she grabbed him and she held him so tightly. "Where have you been?" she said. "Ow, Mummy." "Sorry, son," she said, and she pushed him away. And she looked at him from top to toe. "What on God's green earth has happened to your clothes?" she said. Because he wasn't wearing his scruffy clothes anymore. He had the most beautiful, it was a suit, a new suit of greens and browns, and on his feet were brand new boots. And more than that, and this was really unusual, Tim was clean. His hair had been combed. There were no smudges of dirt anywhere on his face. Even his fingernails were clean, except one of them did look a little bit red. "What happened?" she said. "Sit down, son. Do you want to tell me what happened?" And Tim told her his story. "Well," he said, "I went into the field, Ma'am, and I found the best blackberry bush ever. And they were gorgeous blackberries. And I picked some of them and I ate some of them. And then I noticed that the blackberries were getting taller. And they got taller and taller. And then I realised it wasn't the blackberries getting taller. It was me getting smaller, Mammy. I ended up as small as a mouse. It was a bit scary. And the blackberries were snagging in my trousers and I couldn't get away. And then I realised it wasn't the blackberries, it was the fairies. And they wouldn't let me go, Mum. And I was a bit scared, actually, at that point, because they lifted me up and they took me down a rabbit hole. And they took me to Tir and Og, fairyland, Mummy. Oh, it's so beautiful. You would love it there. And they bathed me. They put me in a big bath full of bubbles and they scrubbed me really clean. And they said I had to look perfect for the fairy queen. They brushed my hair. They cleaned my nails. They even gave me some clean clothes to wear. And then they took me to meet the fairy queen. I know, Mum, she was lovely. She smelled like sweeties. And when I looked at her, I felt all fizzy inside, and she gave me some fairy cakes to eat, some tiny cakes and a lovely drink. But then she sent me back home to you, and here I am. And Mary grabbed him once again and she hugged him and thanked God for his safe return. But she couldn't understand it. He'd eaten and drunk in fairyland. And she didn't understand how he'd escaped. "Ow!" said Timmy. "Ow, Mum!" "Oh, I'm sorry, love," she said, and she let him go. "I shouldn't squeeze you so hard." "No," he said, "it's this." And she looked at his finger, and there under his nail was a blackberry thorn. They'd missed a bit of this world. And quick as a flash, Mary, with her tweezers and her motherly skill, she managed to remove that blackberry thorn, and she held it up to Tim and she said, "That was a very lucky escape."
Oh, lovely. Proper Irish story. Well done. Lovely. Lovely to hear it. And well
Thank
told.
you.
Absolutely. Yes. It's beautiful. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in Ireland with Liz Weir and Eddie Lenahan and Johnny Campbell before he passed on to the other side, and one or two others. And I know a lot of Irish stories, but that's a lovely story you told there. I like that story. Right. Now then, where are we? So we've got Mike and we've got Norman. So well, let's go to Mike next, and then Norman, are you going to do one, my friend? Okay, so we'll go to Mike next, then to Norman. Sue, we're in Texas. You know, you're shaking your head still. Okay, fair enough. Okay.
I think Sue's in South Africa, Mike. Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, for some reason I thought you were in Texas. Never mind. Okay. I'm terrible at this emceeing stuff. I get all the names wrong. I get all the countries wrong. I don't know why they asked me to do it. Okay.
I heard you came cheap. I don't know. I guess I better stick to fairies, eh? Since that's where we are tonight. And I want to tell you the story of this really sweet, kind, polite little girl. She'd lost both her parents and she lived with her grandmother, but she was so kind, so polite, that even though they had a tiny little rundown cottage with a tiny little garden and a tiny little goat, they got by because a lot of people loved this little girl and would give her a spare bit of bread or a little bit of corn. And she was always so polite. And they had their goat, but the garden was so small, there was nothing left in the garden for the goat to eat. So what they did, she would take the goat out and let it eat the grass along the side of the lanes, the verges. But one day the goat wandered away, and lying on the grass was a sleeping pirate. The whole bit, you know. And the goat disturbed the pirate. And the pirate jumped up and kicked at the goat and swore. And he pulled out his pistol. Let me show you what he had. He pulled out his pistol and he tried to shoot the goat, but he was so drunk he missed by miles, thank goodness. But it scared the goat and she ran away. And the little girl ran after the goat and then discovered the goat had gone into the fairy wood, the wood of the little men. And she got in there and the goat was eating and eating and eating, but it wasn't eating leaves. It was eating these great, huge, beautiful blackberries. They were glistening like Maria's blackberries. The light danced off them, as you were saying. And she was shocked because no one goes into that wood because it was the fairy wood, the little men's wood. And the little girl looked around and said, "I'm so sorry about my goat eating your blackberries. I'm so sorry." She didn't know any better. She was scared and she ran in. And then she looked at the blackberries and thought, "Oh, they look awfully good. Awfully. Oh, look at the light glint. Oh." And she said, "I wonder, would it be all right if I just took a few blackberries, put them in my apron and took them back for my grandmother and myself to eat tonight?" And a voice came out of the woods, "Of course you may." And so she gathered up some blackberries in her apron and she said, "Thank you very much," which was a disappointment for the little men because the way the enchantment worked was if you didn't say thank you, you stayed there and you just kept on and on and on eating the blackberries until the inevitable happened. But she took her goat and they let the goat go because she'd been so polite, and she took the blackberries home and she poured them into a big bowl in the garden. But just then, remember that pirate? He came up. "What have you got there?" And she said, "It's just some blackberries. Well, would you like one?" So she was polite, and the pirate took one. And he before you knew it, it was an empty bowl. And the pirate said, "Give me more." She said, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any more. We got them from the fairy wood." She said, "Where'd you get there?" And so she told him how to get to the fairy wood. And he went along to the fairy wood and he saw this carpet of blackberries. And he went, hum, 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 hum. Now, he was a pirate, yeah? Not a word of please, not a word of thank you. And he kept on eating and eating and eating those beautiful blackberries, until in the end, he had a stomach bigger than mine, and suddenly he burst. And there were blackberries and blood and guts and mess up all the trees, and the laughter of the little men. Let that be a lesson. Always say please and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. That was a lovely story. So we go to Norman next.
He came to a very bad end.
We did.
He did. Well, let's keep the berry thing going, at least for a moment in my story. Now, this is set in my own home territory where I grew up, Black Bay Road in the Ottawa Valley. Black Bay Road is one of those roads that's straight for a distance, and then for whatever reason starts wiggle-waggling all over the place, and close enough to Black Bay to get its name. And this is an odd bay, because it's not a bay on a lake or anything like that, or it's a bay on a river. Because after the ice retreated and the water came down from the hills and down to the Ottawa Valley, onto Ottawa River, it filled all of these ravines. And these ravines formed bays, like spikes all along until it reaches the Ottawa. And so there we are. Now, Jack was a good lad. He lived alone with his mother on a farm on Black Bay Road because his father had died in the Great War. And Jack meant to be a good, hard worker. But somehow when he got up in the morning, his mother's bang, bang, bang on the stairwell. Daylight in the swamp, Jack. Time to get up. Well, Jack got up. He'd eat the breakfast of oatmeal and toast and tea. And he meant to do all the work he was supposed to do. Haul water, clean out the stables, feed the cows, and get them their water. But, wood's heavy. He would go out into the barn, and when he saw it was piled up behind those cows, he would just hightail it for the woods where the air was sweet and the birds were singing. And his mother ended up doing all the work. Well, this day was no different. Jack got up, went into the barn, came out, and went into the woods. He went into the woods to do what he really liked to do, and that was pick berries. And this was the season of thimbleberries, as we call them. And so there he was, picking them, putting them into a basket, one for the basket, one for him, one for the basket, one for him. When suddenly he heard the sound of a bird. Now Jack thought he knew every bird in the woods, in the forest. But this particular bird seemed, he didn't recognize it at all. And it seemed to be coming from an old dead pine. And so he walked over to the pine and walked around it several times, but he didn't see or hear anything when suddenly he heard the bird call once again from deeper in the woods. Intrigued, he followed that sound, and he went deeper and deeper and deeper into the forest. His berry bowl, her basket completely forgotten. He was so oblivious trying to what was going on when he didn't notice that the weather was changing. The sky clouded over, and suddenly there was a crack of thunder and a flash of lightning, and it began to rain. And the rain came tumbling down. And poor Jack was soaked in no time to the skin. And what's more, he was lost. He didn't know where he was. And there he was, stumbling through the rain. Throughout the rest of the day, the sun went down, it got dark, and he was still lost. And he was cold and wet and shivering when suddenly he saw a light. And a light. Where there's light, there's people. Where there's people, there's shelter and warmth. And more than anything else, Jack wanted to get warm and dry. And so he followed that light through the darkness, and he came to a clearing. And in the clearing, there was a small cabin. And there's a light coming out of the window in that log cabin. And he went and he was about to knock on the door when the door just opened up silently. And he saw in front of him a fireplace. On one side, there was a bed with a quilt on it. And on the other side of the fireplace, there was this old woman. And she was sitting in a rocking chair. And she was rocking back and forth and back and forth. And then she saw Jack and she stopped. And she says, Jack, why don't you come and warm yourself by my fire? You look like you're frozen. Well, Jack didn't need to be asked twice, but he wondered, how did she know his name? But he ran across that room and soon he was standing in front of that roaring fire and steaming on one side and then turning around and steaming on the other while the old woman rocked in her chair, rocking back and forth, back and forth. And then she stopped. She said, hey, Jack, your boots must be awful wet. You probably hurt your feet. Why don't you take them off? Well, that seems sensible. So Jack's bent down, unlaced his boots, took them off, and the old woman got up and she took the boots from him and put them in the middle of the room. And then she went back to rock, back and forth, back and forth. And then she stopped and he says, Jack, that shirt of yours must be awful wet too. Why don't you take it off and I'll dry it for you? Well, that seems smart too. So Jack unbuttoned it, took the shirt off. She took the shirt, shook it out, smoothed out the wrinkles, folded it up, and put on top of the boots in the middle of the room and went back to the rocking chair to rock back and forth, back and forth. Well, Jack stood there in his long underwear and his jeans. Then she stopped and he says, Jack, why don't you take off those wet jeans? Well, Jack did that without a word. He handed them to her. She took the jeans, she smoothed them out, folded them up, put on top of the pile in the middle of the room, and went back to the rocking chair to rock back and forth, rock back and forth. And then she stopped. She looked at Jack. Jack looked at her. Then she said, Jack, why don't you? Jack ran across the room, dove beneath the quilt, took off the long underwear, and threw them across the room. And the old woman caught them. And then she shook them out, smoothed them out, folded them up, and put on top of the pile in the middle of the room and went to rock in her chair, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then she stopped. And she looked at Jack. And Jack could see the fire glittering red in her eyes as she whispered, as clear as a bell, Jack, give me your skin. Well, Jack's skin slid off of him and lay there on the floor, and she picked up the skin, shook it out, smoothed out the wrinkles, and folded it up and put it in the middle of the room, and went back to the rocking chair to rock back and forth, back and forth. And then she stopped and said, Jack, give me your flesh. And Jack took off his flesh. And she came over, she took it from him, folded it up as best as she could, and put it on top of the pile in the middle of the room, and went back to the rocking chair to rock back and forth, back and forth. And then she stopped. She said, Jack, give me your bones. Jack took off his bones and bundled them up, and the old woman came over, took the bones, put on top of the pile in the middle of the room. She took the skull and placed it on the top where it faced the fire. And you could see the shadows and flames of the fire dancing in Jack's skull's eyes. And she went back to a rocking chair and she rocked back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and she fell asleep. So Jack went to sleep too, what there was of him, of course. The next morning, the sun was streaming through the one window into the room. Jack woke up. The old woman was still asleep, and so he got up and he went across the room very quietly, and I can't tell you how quiet he was. and he took the bones and he put them into place. Click, 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 clickety, click. The old woman was still sleeping. He took the flesh and he put it into place. Slap, 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 slap. The old woman was still sleeping. And then he put on his skin, and it fitted him well like a skin. He put on his long jeans and then his shirt, and he picked up his boots and he tiptoed across the room and he put on one boot and then the other, and then he ran like hell. He ran and he ran and he ran. He ran through the woods until he ran out of breath. And as he stood there panting, he knew where he was. He was in a laneway that led to his own barn. And he ran down the laneway and he ran into the barn and he grabbed a pitchfork and he put enough hay in the mangers to feed the cows for a week. And then he almost drowned them, filling their water basins. And then he took the shovel and he cleaned out behind those cows until the stalls were as clean as a whistle. And then he went into the woodshed and he picked up a huge load of wood, and staggering underneath that load of wood, he made his way onto the porch and into the kitchen, and he dumped the wood into the wood box. And there was his breakfast, sitting on the kitchen table. Jack was starving. And he sat there and he began to eat his toast and his oatmeal and drinking the hot tea. And his mother didn't even ask him where he had been all night. She just picked up her knitting. She went to a rocking chair by the kitchen stove and she sat down to rock back and forth. And then she looked at Jack and smiled. And from that day on, Jack was the hardest working lad on Blackberry Road.
Well, that's lovely. A proper Jack story.
Uh-huh.
Right, I think
Okay.
so if you want to unmute yourselves, right? So I think we've come to the end of the stories tonight, unless somebody else wants to. We've all told a story here, everybody wants to, but we're quite early on. So we can either do another one or we can just have a chat for a few minutes. We can talk about things that we all like talking about, because I'm an Englishman, so it's like the weather and beer. I see John's come back. Have you finished your little set, John?
Yeah. I'm sitting. Yeah. We finished. I was keeping an eye on you all. Thank you very much for keeping order. I caught the end of Norman's story, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. Shall I announce what's coming up next week, and then you can all carry on with the conversations? I'm sort of in crew eating at the moment.
Right, so can you when you sort the Riads out for me to go to Marrakesh, can I stay with Abdu? Because the Riyadh is absolutely beautiful, and I'll be happy to stay there. I will.
Yeah, well,
they are really beautiful.
Right. So, yeah, Mike's sorting out in the beginning of next month. He's sorting out who's staying where. So we'll put that request to him, and he'll listen tonight anyway. So, anyway.
Okay.
Thank you ever so much for sort of everyone holding it together. I need to mention that tonight, of course, which you probably mentioned already, is if you can hear me over the music, is a fundraiser for the festival. So any money that goes in the hat will go to the festival, and also any money that goes in, anyone who puts in their name goes into a raffle, because Norman Perrin has kindly giving the winner of the raffle a signed book by Duncan Williamson.
Okay. Which one?
Yeah. So which book, Norman?
Don't look back, Jack. There's a picture of it in the
Oh yeah, we
I have
know
that
that.
book.
Yeah.
thread.
Yes, I
Yeah,
have that
so-
book. I've got a signed copy of that book as well. So.
Right.
Well, there's two other
Fantastic.
books. There's two other books as second and third prizes. One is stories about cats, and the other one is a book of stories about bells.
Okay.
Right. So, what we've got coming up in the next few days, Tuesday is one of the most exciting nights, regular nights of the week, because it's our young 18 years and under tellers, and they come from all over India. Occasionally we get Gaza on if they're not having too many problems with their electricity. Occasionally we get Nepal and Nigeria and sometimes Scotland, and any young people from anywhere in the world want to tell. And then Friday we have, and she's here, I don't know what she told tonight, but Susan McGuire from South Africa, amazing.
Yeah.
And she's our Friday night teller at 6 o'clock UK time. And of course, next Sunday, Mike's back at his regular spot because he was only helping us out tonight. Well, not only, he was fantastically helping us out tonight because Gary Cordingley couldn't get there. So thank you for that, Mike. And but next Sunday, 6 o'clock UK time, is our worldwide story round, which of course everyone is welcome to come and tell a story, and Mike compares that. So I'll be an entirely
and you're
different
very
person
welcome. And Mike's normal set. Do some poetry if you want to, or monologue.
Oh yeah, you can do a poem if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I'm going to get on with my
to
meal.
Ali now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave you all to have a natter.
Okay.
Right. See you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, John.
Bye.
Yeah, I'll leave it till Mike says goodbye. Right. Right.
Okay. Well, it's having said that, if we don't, we're very welcome to stay for a few minutes and have a chat about stuff, or we can just call it if you've got lives that you want to go and lead. Okay.
Mike,
Yeah.
you were saying there's not many stories about canals, but do you know about Ian Douglas's book, Folk Tales from
Yeah, I have.
So there's quite a few in there, aren't there?
He has collected. Yeah, he has collected a whole lot.
Yeah.
The folklore of the canals is basically the folklore of the counties that they go through, and a lot of Irish in there, because the workforce that they put together were basically they just followed the canal as they went along. Well, I know Ian, but I haven't had a chance to read his book, so I'm looking forward to doing that. So
well worth it.
Yeah.
I found a thing out a couple of days ago I hadn't known. When people go mudlarking, they find a lot of clay pipes that claim to be made in Dublin, and they were actually mainly made on the Scottish borders to sell to the navvies who would think it was really from Dublin. So fake goods even back then.
Well, we had a pipe works here on the Welsh borders here in a place called Broseley. Mm-hmm. And do you know the grandfather pipes, the great long ones? The great longs. And I still know some in a pub. They have them in little display boxes in pubs. And we had with the Morris men years ago, we had some made. And we all smoked in them days. Everybody smoked in them days, didn't they? Like, you know. And you could hardly put your hand out to hold it. It was that long. It was a bit like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? And it was great fun. And there's dances that you can do. You put the pipes, you cross them like a sword. Because if you touch them, they break. Because they're that fragile. And they get really hot in your hand as well. So.
That might be why there's so many thrown away around the riverbanks and things.
Yeah, they didn't last long. They were penny pipes. Yeah, they were penny pipes. So people used to take them out for their work, and then they had a proper. Do you ever smoke a pipe with a Melsham, the stone ones? Masham, they're called. Yeah, and the stone was really cool, and a bit like Sherlock Holmes, those kind of pipes.
One of
But
those ones.
sometimes they're made out of stone more than they were made out of wood or what, clay or whatever. Yeah.
By the way, meerschaum means sea foam.
Yeah.
That the
Means
mir
what?
it means sea foam, if I remember correctly, and that's why they're
Yes.
so cool. They're so porous but still strong that you're not going to burn yourself holding the bowl.
Yeah, yeah. But they
It's
keep
one
the
of my
tobacco
favorite
quite
words.
cool.
Hmm?
Yeah, they keep the tobacco quite cool. I gave up smoking 21 years ago now.
Strangely enough, I was hiking in the mountains outside of Albuquerque a few weeks ago, and I stumbled onto some strange-looking object sort of coming out of the dirt, and I dug it up, and it was an old meerschaum pipe with a 1930 something copyright on it.
Wow.
Oh,
All right.
well, that's a
So,
keeper.
Yeah,
when you say you were climbing through the mountains in Albuquerque, which state is that?
that's in New Mexico. New
in
Mexico. New Mexico.
Right. New Mexico.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Right. Is that with the native First Nations, you call them? Is that would they be living there?
Oh yeah, we're surrounded on three sides by native Pueblo communities, and there are 19 northern Pueblo communities in New Mexico. The Pueblo people were are the only Native American, just about the only Native Americans that never were moved to reservations. They're still living on their ancestral lands.
Mm. That's
Oh,
good.
right. Okay. I knew an Apache, Lakota Apache named Debbie Tomlinson. And she lives in Philadelphia nowadays. But she says if I was ever over in the States, she'd take me out to the reservation in Texas.
Well, if you can spend some time with Dovey, you'll be in really, really good company. She's a colleague and a friend at a distance, and an incredible teller, wonderful person.
Oh, she's been over to the UK a few times. We're looking to get her to come back maybe next year or the year after. There's another, talk about mutual friends. There's a fellow called Dan Kedding. Do you know Dan?
Say again?
Dan Kedding.
No, I don't think so. No.
Is that the name Keding? Kedding?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. We were just sitting with some storytellers about an hour ago and his name came up. His ears must be
Right, well,
burned.
yeah. When I was over in the States, I stayed with him. I stayed 30 days with him, and I went off storytelling with him all around. We went down, I got booked to the festival over there with another famous storyteller from over here called Amy Douglas. And we went to the States for a month touring around the place.
You're
It was
such
just
rock
after
and
9.
roll.
Eh?
You're very rock and roll. Just popped over
Yeah,
to the
you're-
States.
Yeah. It was 20 odd years ago now, and I stopped doing it. Yeah. I must be normally, Maria, I'd be in Whitby Folk Week this week.
Oh yeah.
And that's I just went there instead. Going to Yorkshire is always good. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Whitby actually. Are you normally telling or playing? You've got lots of different things that you do, haven't you?
No, I did the storytelling there for
Yeah.
30 years.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
gorgeous up there, isn't it?
Yeah, and after a bit, I got to know the people who ran it. So, and they became friends of mine. So I could pick the storyteller. So Duncan came down, Johnny Campbell came over, Eddie Lenahan would come, Stanley Robinson came down. And these are names some of you will know and some of you don't, but these are the old tellers
Yeah.
from the UK. And we had a wonderful time. You sit by the sea. You don't get paid very much. You just sit by the seaside, drink beer and tell stories all week. It's wonderful.
Yeah. It's online this year, isn't it? They're doing an online one. I've got a little set of stories in there this year. Just the online.
Yes, I noticed that.
I was ridiculously excited about that.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely. Yeah, because your friend Kath was booked this year. She was going to go up.
Has she done the online thing? I didn't see her name on it. I don't know if she's
No,
done
I
that.
don't think she's done. I think you've got that. So that's Sue Houston is the lady who sorts that out, and Mel Barber nowadays.
Yeah, they got in touch. I think they had a space that they needed filling, so I was quite lucky. Just got in there and did it. But I did dash it off a bit, but it'll be nice. I think. I hope.
It's on YouTube, is it?
I think so. Yeah, it's going to come out. I think it gets launched, as it were, tomorrow, and then it's around for about a week or 2 weeks afterwards. I don't know because I've not done this before, so I don't know. But yeah, I was really chuffed.
Yeah. Well, I always consider it to be a compliment to be a Whippy. So.
Yeah. I was up there not long ago. My niece has just bought a house up there, one of the very big houses opposite the Plantagenet Park. She's a very big house, mansion, actually.
Yeah. Norman, we're impressed. Nod your head, Norman. We're impressed.
Yeah, very impressive.
They've got a house there.
Huge. It's going to be holiday lets and things, and they're living in it as well. So it's a business thing. But yeah, I went and stayed in it, and it was lovely. It's just such a lovely town, isn't it? Really nice.
I know every pub in Whitby.
Yeah.
I
went up I went Morris dancing up there for a couple of years. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm going to let Ali go now. He's sat there. And this is work for him. So I'm going to call
Thank you very much, Ali. And
thank you very much, Ali. And Abdul, that was a wonderful talk.
Yeah.
And I'll see you all this time next week. If you all turn up again to tell stories, I'll be sat here at 6 o'clock where I am in the evening on a Sunday, and I'll sit here once a fortnight and just listen to everybody tell me stories and knock one out myself from time to time. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I couldn't do this without people like you turning up. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Mike.
guys.
Okay.
That was lovely. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Bye, Maria.
Adios.
Thank you, guys. Bye.